I've got a question for you. Have you ever gotten a draft of your child's IEP? And if you're a teacher watching, do you give drafts of the IEP before the IEP meeting? I've been working on IEPs for over 25 years. I'm a special needs sibling. I'm a former special education teacher, and I'm founder of the Master IEP Coach Mentorship. Welcome to this hot topic of drafts and the IEPs. So go ahead and post below and let me know, have you ever gotten a draft or do you give drafts of the IEP? You're going to see a variety of answers from all across the country because it works different everywhere. First, let me just share with you, I'm not a lawyer. I tell you where to look in the special education law because I am obsessed with making sure that every child receives an appropriate education that meets their unique needs, that prepares them for further education, employment, and independent living, because it's stated in the purpose and findings of IDEA law that that's what's supposed to be happening. But to do that, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of prep. It takes a lot of intentional decision-making before, during, and after the IEP meeting. So back in the day, like a long time ago, when I first stepped out of the classroom and I started working for parents and the districts would bring me in to do some consulting on all things IEPs, drafts were very rarely ever heard of. In fact, it was a lot of pushback of, no, we can't give you a draft because we have to create the IEP together. Now, let's just call it like it is. We all know that the IEP is not written from scratch at each and every IEP meeting. That would take forever. So I'm just going to share here that, Andrea says, this is almost unheard of where I'm located. Anita says, never got a draft. Didn't know it was a thing. Exactly. And that's why we're talking about it today. So Jessica says, I request drafts every time and the school rushes to finish it the day before the meeting. Yep, that happens too. So let's talk about some different strategies about how you can get a draft of the IEP or what to do if you don't get that draft of the IEP. So number one, there's no federal law that says a draft IEP must be provided. So please hear me loud and clear. You cannot go into your next meeting or when you send an email to the school and say, I saw this lady on Facebook or YouTube and she said that you have to give me a draft IEP. It's my right. Nope, I'm not saying that. What I am telling you is that everybody needs to be participating in the prep work to prepare for this IEP meeting, and that parents need to be an equal IEP team member. Now, how can you be an equal member of the team if you don't have equal information? That just doesn't make sense. So we're going to use that foundation of making sure that a parent is an equal IEP team member to make sure that we're giving draft IEPs when possible. Now, when I say when possible, because I'm going to tell you, there are school districts everywhere that are going to deny a teacher giving a child's parent an IEP, giving child's parents the draft of the IEP. They're just going to say, no, we're not allowed to do that here. Number one, there's no written policy. No way is there a policy anywhere that says, do not ever give parents papers before the IEPs. That doesn't exist. So I just want to clear up that if you have ever asked for a draft IEP and you've been told, no, we can't do that, that's an old school habit. I would say old school habits are what kill our momentum in moving forward and getting beyond all of these negative things that happen in special education. It's these old school habits. So there's a couple of different ways that I encourage those who are in the special education inner circle and master IEP coaches to work on getting a draft. If you don't know what those are, the special education inner circle and the master IEP coach mentorship, let me know below. I'll make sure that you get the links, and you can always find out by hopping over to masteriepcoach.com and get connected there. Okay. Number one, when you get your notice for the IEP, it is very important that you respond to that and say, yes, I will be there on that day. Please provide a draft of all data, papers, and recommendations that will be provided at the meeting so I can review. I also recommend that you add another statement in there that says, I understand that this is a draft and we will work together as a team. A lot of times the team needs the reassurance that you know that this is not the final copy, that you're not making decisions without the parent. This is not the time to get angry about what's in the draft. It's a draft. And sometimes you have to acknowledge that, like, yes, this is a draft and I'm asking for it so I can participate as an equal IEP team member. Now, sometimes you'll get a response right back to that and it'll say, no, I'm sorry, we can't provide that beforehand. You can respond to that as a parent and say, I understand. Again, I'm making this request so I can participate as an equal team member. If my request is being denied, please understand that I will be listening only at the meeting. I will not be making decisions because I will be hearing all information for the first time. Or you can even say, if they say something like, we can't get the draft ready for you ahead of time, don't worry, we'll just have the meeting and then you can decide later. You can say, well, thank you for letting me know that you don't have the time to complete a draft. What's a different date that we could have the meeting that would allow the team to have the time to create the draft? Now, teachers, just so you know, I feel you, okay? I was a special education teacher. I know that it's hard to do all the paperwork. I completely get that you have so much on your plate, and I'm not looking to put more on your plate. This process of getting a draft out to the parents before the IEP meeting makes IEP meetings go faster, smoother, more productive, and you get to use the time wisely. Very rarely are we ever sitting at the IEP meeting using our time wisely for a majority of that meeting. What I mean by that is we don't all get to sit in the same room, even virtually, very often as an IEP team with all the expertise that is there. Should we really be working on issues that don't require the whole team? No, we shouldn't. We need to use that IEP meeting and say, okay, I got the draft. So I see, okay, OT, you want to work on sensory regulation. Okay, teacher, how's that looking in your classroom? Speech therapist, do we need to improve communication on this? How are we going to work together on a team to achieve what's in the draft? How are we going to pull together and make this happen and move this child further to make sure that they're reaching their goals in a timely manner? So you absolutely, as an IEP team, want to provide a draft whenever possible, because guess what? No parent wants to be blindsided. You're going to bring down the anxiety and bring up the collaboration when you're providing a draft. Let me give you a key area that should always be part of the draft. Now, parents, this is for you too. In fact, it's majority you. So inside of every IEP, there's a section called, here's the thing. I'm going to say parent educational concerns, because that's what it's called in a lot of places. Sometimes it's called parent input statement, parent vision statement. It can be called parent something, okay? But there's always a space in the IEP for parents. There's always a place for the voice. Now, sometimes that space, okay, most of the time, that space is used for things like parent is worried that child always leaves jacket on bus, or parent is concerned that reading progress hasn't been made. Parent's concerned that child's not eating their entire lunch. We need to use that parent concerns letter section and write a letter that really tackles the areas of social, emotional, communication, behavioral, and academic all together, and then write a draft of the IEP that addresses all of those areas. A draft of the IEP should be bringing the team together. Hey, this is what the family is concerned about, worried about, working towards in all of those areas. And here's the draft IEP of how we're going to help bring together all of the concerns and all of the areas of expertise and make this progress happen. It's absolutely possible to have an IEP meeting that's focused on the how are we going to get this done, not just what are we going to get this done. The draft says what are we going to work on. The meeting is a what, but it's also how are we going to get all this done? Have we missed any of the details? How can we make sure that there's accountability? How are we going to move forward in all of this? Wouldn't that feel better if you're sitting at an IEP meeting already knowing what you're going to be talking about, and then you're talking about how to make it happen? But to do that, you need to have a draft of the IEP. Now, some of you are never going to get a draft. It's just never going to happen. That's okay. You can wrap up that meeting and say, thank you so much for all of the information. It was a lot to take in order to be an equal IEP team member. I'll be taking all of this information in, and I'll be giving you feedback with a follow-up parent concerns letter after this meeting. Take time to digest it the same way that you would a draft. Teachers, if you ever hear somebody say that, hear a parent say that, be grateful, not scared. Be thankful, not fearful. The reason is the parent is going to take some time and think about it so she doesn't just say yes and then regret her yes and then get mad at you later for something that she agreed to because she didn't fully understand it. You don't want parents to agree on the fly to things that they don't fully understand because it will come back to bite you. You need to consider that meeting a prep session, even if it is your legal annual IEP meeting. We are preparing this conversation, this document, and all of these things, but we're not going to 100% seal the deal until the parent has time to digest all of this if you don't already have a draft. So I want you to understand there's a couple of different ways. Let's just recap. One, you can just simply request a draft. Hey, can I get a draft of the IEP? Some of your teams don't need anything more complicated than that. Number two, you can write it in a more formal way after you get a notice of meeting and say, yes, I'm going to be there. Please provide me with the draft of the IEP 3 days prior to the meeting. If this cannot be provided, please let me know an alternative meeting date so the team has time to get a draft to me. If the team still says, no, we can't give you a draft, then you can absolutely make it clear that you're going to consider this meeting a collaboration and that the team should not expect you to be making any significant decisions due to not being able to be an equal team member because you don't have the same information. I know those sound like strong words, but it's okay. Those are not fighting words. Those are words to give everybody equal voice and equal input in there. If you need help asking for a draft, writing a draft, creating that parent input statement that should be driving the draft of the IEP. Teachers, if you need help eliciting that information out of the parents, you need help getting that information into the IEP. I'm going to tell you right now, the place to be right now is the Special Education Inner Circle. You head over to specialedinnercircle.com. You drop your name and email. I'm going to send you information on how to get into the inner circle. That's where we continue this conversation. I have given you the outline of how to get it done, but you need the tools to get there. I'm going to give them to you. I'm going to be there for Q&A. I'm going to have IEP office hours. I'm going to continue this conversation with you at a whole other level to make sure that you are being heard at the IEP table. And when I say you, I'm not just speaking to parents. Teachers, you have a voice, you have an expertise. You need to get everything together at that table so you're on the same page.